He stares across the dusty arena as the old horse collapses under the jeers of the crowd, moments from being sent to slaughter. Defying every warning, he steps forward with a life-changing offer that ignites a conflict threatening everything he holds dear. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The midday sun beat down on the dusty rodeo grounds, illuminating every weathered plank of the arena and throwing harsh shadows across the stands. Among the eager chatter of spectators waiting for the next event, there was a lone figure standing near the holding pens, observing a horse that had clearly seen better days. That old creature, with a graying mane and a back that revealed every notch of its spine, limped along as if each step hurt more than the last. The announcer's voice blared from the loudspeakers, calling riders to line up, but no one approached that battered animal. It stood apart, rejected and forgotten, a pitiful remnant of glory, days long past. A few minutes earlier, a rodeo official had tried to usher the horse back into a trailer, muttering that it was a waste of space, too slow, too frail, unfit to entertain the crowd. Some of the organizers even laughed, saying it should be sent away for good. The old horse tossed its head lightly, seemingly aware of its fate, while a strand of its mane fell over one cloudy eye that had seen far too many disappointments. Riders prepared their younger, stronger mounts, ignoring the old nag whose presence was more of an embarrassment than a symbol of the proud Western tradition they claimed to uphold. Meanwhile, in a corner near the metal railing, a young man named Cody watched in silence. He had traveled from his small ranch on the outskirts of town, partly for the excitement of the competition, partly for a chance to earn a little money in barrel racing events, but mostly because he simply loved horses. From the time he was a child, any horse, healthy or sick, strong or weak, had captured his full attention. Perhaps it was the reflection of his own life. Cody understood what it meant to come from nothing, to be overlooked or underestimated. He wore faded jeans, dusty boots, and a fraying hat, and though his pockets were nearly empty, there was a brightness in his eyes whenever he fixed his gaze on a horse in need. When Cody first noticed the old horse, he felt his heart tighten. It wasn't unusual to see animals who'd passed their prime, but the casual cruelty with which this one was being dismissed stung him. There was something in that animal's stoic posture, something in the way it stood there, lonely and half trembling. As rodeo workers sidled closer with rope halters, intent on hauling the creature away, Cody heard one of them say, "No reason to keep this one around. He can barely stand. Let's get him off the grounds." The young man stepped forward, ignoring the stares of passers-by. "Wait," Cody said, voice tense. "What's the plan for that horse?" A gruff older man shrugged. "Plan? He was brought here by some folks who realized he's too slow for anything. Might end up at auction if anyone even bothers. More than likely, he's on his way to the slaughterhouse. He can't perform, can't work. No use at a rodeo. There's nothing left for him to do." The idea of slaughter made Cody's stomach churn. He knew harsh realities existed in the livestock world, but the bluntness of it still cut deep. He stepped closer, resting a hand gently on the old horse's flank. Beneath the layers of dust and the scars of old rope burns, he could feel the horse trembling with each labored breath. Its eyes flicked to meet his, and in that brief glance, Cody saw fear mingled with something else. Maybe longing, maybe hope. "What if I take him?" Cody asked, almost without thinking. He felt a jolt of nerves flash through him as soon as the words left his mouth. He had barely enough feed for his own animals back home. The water supply on his ranch was limited, and any spare cash he earned usually went to help his younger siblings. Still, something inside him refused to let go of this moment. "I'll give him a chance," he added in a firmer tone. "You don't have to pay me or anything. Just let me take him off your hands." The official looked at him as if he were insane. "You sure, boy? You'll be stuck feeding this old bag of bones. And for what? He's not going to make you any money. He can't even stand on all four legs properly." Cody swallowed, steadying himself. "I've got a small ranch outside town," he explained. "I'll take care of him. Don't worry about me making a profit." The man shook his head, half amused, half incredulous. "Well, if you insist, sign some release forms so no one can say we sold you a dud. Take him tonight. Truth is, we didn't plan on keeping him for more than a few hours anyway." And so it was decided. While the rodeo continued under bright lights and swirling dust, with triumphant riders chasing dreams of glory, Cody finalized the paperwork. The old horse twitched its ears, perhaps sensing that the outcome of the day had changed. Even if it didn't fully comprehend, it no longer stood alone on the fringes. There was at least one human being who saw value beneath the dull coat and knobby knees. Once the forms were completed, Cody guided the horse carefully toward the rickety trailer he'd borrowed from a friend. Each step made the horse wobble, as if its legs might buckle at any second. Still, it followed him quietly, exhaling strained whinnies that spoke of exhaustion and relief. Cody whispered soothing words, even though he knew the poor creature likely didn't understand them. But he believed in the power of a gentle voice, especially for a soul that had only known harsh commands and cold indifference. With effort, Cody helped the horse into the trailer, then secured the gate. After a final glance at the bustling rodeo ring, where the cheering crowd had no idea of the small drama playing out by the loading area, he drove away in an old pickup that threatened to overheat any moment. It was dark by the time he reached his ranch, an expanse of modest corrals and a simple barn flanked by patchy fields. The moon illuminated the worn wood of the fence posts, and the air smelled of dry grass. Carefully, he backed the trailer up to the barn. He took a deep breath, hoping the horse would have the strength to walk inside. As he lowered the ramp, he murmured, "Easy now. You're home." The horse took a tentative step, stumbled, then made its way out of the trailer, leaning against Cody for support. Once inside the barn, Cody guided the horse into an empty stall, laying down fresh straw he'd been saving. He filled a bucket with water, placing it near the animal's head. The horse sniffed, ears twitching as if uncertain whether to trust that the water was truly for him. Then, with a deep thirst, he began to drink. Cody watched quietly, his heart tight with a mixture of concern and cautious optimism. He recognized that the horse was malnourished, dehydrated, and possibly suffering from more ailments than a quick glance could reveal. But here, at least, it had a safe place to rest. He tried not to think about how he would pay for the upcoming feed bills. He tried not to dwell on the fact that just this morning, he'd been counting his last few dollars to see if he could afford new boots. Instead, he focused on smoothing the horse's ragged mane, wiping away the day's sweat and dust with a damp cloth. "I don't even know your name," he said softly, half expecting no response. "But I promise, I'm going to do my best for you." He took his time examining the horse's legs, pressing gently around the swollen joints. A few times the old creature winced. Cody found small cracks in the hooves, scabs along the belly, and spots of thinning fur that hinted at worms or disease. He sighed, knowing the road ahead would be long and complicated. Yet the alternative, leaving the horse to be carted away for slaughter, would have haunted him. At least now, the horse had a chance. After ensuring the stall was secure, Cody slumped onto a nearby bale of hay, exhaustion spreading through his limbs. The eventful day weighed on his mind. The pitying stares of rodeo riders, the mocking voices that asked why he'd even bother with a horse too old to run. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was that somewhere in the darkness of the stall, there was a living, breathing soul that needed him. And he realized, with a slight smile, that perhaps he needed that horse just as much. Caring for it gave him a sense of purpose and an odd kind of hope. At dawn, the rooster's call reverberated across the fields, announcing a new day. Cody rose early, heading straight to the barn. The horse lay on the straw, eyes half closed. For a split second, Cody's heart clenched. Was it still breathing? Then he saw the animal's ribcage expand and felt relief wash over him. Carefully, he knelt by its head and offered a gentle pat on the neck. "Morning, old fella," he said, voice soft. "I got some hay and water for you. Gonna check your legs again, see if I can't figure out a routine to help you heal." He knew he'd have to call the local vet soon, though the cost was daunting, but maybe Dr. Rodriguez would set up a payment plan. Whatever it took, Cody was determined to help this horse stand on strong legs again, or at least find some comfort. As he sat there, hearing the soft shuffle of hooves in the surrounding stalls, Cody felt an unexpected wave of gratitude. He might not have riches, but he had this place, a humble ranch built with his own hands, and now perhaps a chance to do something worthwhile. He reached for an old brush and ran it gently along the horse's flank, coaxing tangles from the unkempt coat. "We'll go slow," Cody promised. "Doesn't matter what the folks at that rodeo said. You're more than a forgotten relic. I know it, and I believe you've got a little life left inside you, enough to show everyone they were wrong." Outside, the sun rose, gilding the horizon with soft gold. In that tender light, the old horse lifted its head, ears twitching with faint curiosity. Cody smiled, imagining a day when the animal would no longer tremble under its own weight. A day when the dullness in its eyes might vanish. This was only the beginning. He didn't know how the story would end, but he clung to the idea that redemption and second chances were possible for anyone, horse or human, willing to fight for them. Cody woke earlier than usual that following morning, determined to get a head start on the chores around the ranch. The old horse had survived its first night, and though it remained quiet and frail, Cody believed a small victory had already been achieved. After checking the other stalls to ensure all was well, he returned to the newcomer's stall with a warm mash he had prepared from oats and a bit of molasses. The horse lifted its head slowly, eyes reflecting cautious curiosity. Cody knelt beside it, murmuring soft encouragement as the animal sniffed the offered feed. Over the next few days, the old horse's progress was gradual yet evident. It began to whinny whenever Cody approached, and the initial tremble in its legs lessened, though it remained unsteady. Each morning, Cody mixed that special mash, mindful of the horse's sensitive digestion. He spent afternoons rubbing liniment into its shoulders and haunches to ease stiffness. Occasionally, neighbors passed by with mild curiosity, peeking into the barn to see the so-called lost cause. Cody kept his focus on each small improvement, from a spark in the horse's eyes to the firmer set of its stance. At first, the cost of extra feed weighed heavily on his mind. He scraped together what little money he had, sold a few unused items stored in the barn, and accepted odd jobs from local ranchers to buy the supplements the horse required. Despite the financial strain, he refused to regret his decision. Each time the horse turned its head in his direction or allowed its muzzle to brush his palm, Cody felt his resolve strengthen. He was determined to show that an old, discarded animal could still carry within it a spirit worth rescuing and a future worth embracing. One afternoon, after finishing a round of errands, Cody noticed a battered pickup parked near his front gate. A tall figure leaned against the door, shading his eyes as he peered toward the barn. Cody recognized him as Hank Rawlings, a longtime rodeo rider and occasional ranch hand. Hank rarely visited other ranches unless he had a pressing reason, and the stern lines on his sun-baked face suggested this was no casual drop-in. Brushing the dust from his shirt, Cody approached warily. He wondered if Hank had heard rumors about the horse, or if there was another motive. "Cody," Hank said with a quick nod, arms crossed. "Heard you picked up a worthless nag at the rodeo." Figured I'd see if it was the same horse I remember from back in the day. Cody stiffened. He didn't appreciate the tone, but forced a polite smile. Leading Hank into the barn, he gestured to the stall. The old horse dozed, eyes half shut, though it perked up slightly at their approach. Hank let out a low whistle, stepping closer and tilting his head to inspect the sunken flanks and thinning coat. "Yep," he muttered. "It's him." A flicker of intrigue sparked in Cody. "You know this horse?" he asked, resting a hand on the old gelding's withers. Hank nodded, running calloused fingers through the animal's tangled mane. "I've seen him on the circuit a few times years ago. Owner was some hotshot who called him Dusty. Claimed he was unbeatable until injuries piled up." A faint sadness crept over Hank's features as he spoke. "Guess they dropped him once he stopped winning. No surprise." Cody clenched his jaw, anger simmering at the thought of a proud horse discarded like broken tack. Encouraged by this shard of Dusty's past, Cody asked if Hank recalled any details that might help with the horse's care. Hank shrugged, glancing toward the stall door. "He was fast, good at sharp turns, but from what I heard he tore a ligament, never got proper rehab, so he just kept racing until he couldn't." Hank's gaze flicked to Cody. "Look, I admire your heart, but do you really think you can bring him back from the brink? He's no spring colt. Even with therapy, he won't be champion again." Cody nodded slowly, stroking Dusty's forehead. "I know. I'm not trying to make him champion. I just want him to have a decent life." For a moment, Hank studied Cody's expression and seemed to weigh his sincerity. Finally, Hank sighed and reached into his jacket pocket, producing a folded scrap of paper. "Here," he said, extending it to Cody. "Name of a vet up north who specializes in older horses and tendon injuries. Might be worth it. You'll probably need real therapy if you mean to give him a fair shot." Cody accepted the paper gratefully. After Hank left, Cody stood outside the stall, the scrap of paper clutched in his hand. Dust motes drifted through the warm air, lit by sunbeams filtering through the barn's roof. Dusty flicked his tail and snorted, shifting weight off his sore leg. Determination washed over Cody. Yes, it would be expensive to consult a specialist, and it might take months of therapy to restore even part of the horse's strength. But every little success, every flicker of life in Dusty's eyes, convinced Cody the effort was worth it. By evening, Cody had made up his mind. He dialed the number Hank had given him, and a friendly receptionist scheduled an appointment for the following week. Meanwhile, Cody would do all he could: gentle hand walks on soft ground, carefully measured feed, and plenty of rest. At times, he caught Dusty gazing at him with an almost resigned acceptance, as if unsure why a human was investing so much care. Though the horse still struggled to walk more than a short distance without limping, Cody noticed he no longer trembled so violently. That night, Cody found himself unable to sleep. He lay in bed listening to the occasional scrape of tree branches against the house. His mind circled around the challenge of paying for treatment. Maybe he could take on extra hauling jobs or negotiate a plan with the vet. Worry gnawed at him, but whenever he imagined leaving Dusty to face an unknown fate, his heart clenched. He couldn't abandon a creature that had run out of chances. In the stillness, he promised himself he would see this through. Morning light roused him early. He trudged to the barn, armed with a usual bucket of feed plus a few carrots he'd managed to buy cheaply in town. Dusty lowered his head and nibbled the carrots with surprising gentleness, dark eyes shifting toward Cody. In these silent moments, Cody felt a bond forming. This wasn't just a rescue, it was a partnership. The horse no longer cowered at sudden movements or shrank from touch, and though the limp remained, there was a faint spark of determination. Cody's heart surged with cautious hope, grateful for these small victories. As the day continued, he decided to walk Dusty around the property's perimeter, letting him graze on tender shoots of grass near the fence. The horse moved slowly, ears flicking at distant sounds of ranch life. A pair of crows perched on a gate, watching them with beady eyes. Sometimes Dusty paused, blowing softly through his nostrils to test the breeze. Cody guided him gently, careful not to push too far. Even if they only circled the yard once, it was progress and a promise of better days ahead. Later that same week, Cody borrowed his neighbor's horse trailer for the trip to the specialist vet. He had washed and brushed Dusty as best he could, wanting the horse to look cared for, even if still gaunt and stiff. To Cody, every small act mattered. Loading Dusty into the trailer proved a challenge. The horse hesitated on the ramp, shifting his weight from one weak leg to the other. Cody spoke encouragingly, keeping a steady hand on the gelding's flank until, at last, Dusty stepped inside. As the trailer door latched, Cody sensed the anxiety thrumming just beneath the horse's calm facade. He climbed into his old truck with a steady resolve, hoping today might mark a turning point in both their lives. The drive took nearly 2 hours across back roads and farmland. Dust clouds swirled behind the trailer, and the midday sun glared off the windshield. Cody allowed himself to imagine Dusty healthy again, able to trot without pain, perhaps even canter freely in the pasture. Hope swelled, but he tempered it with realism. Injuries like Dusty's couldn't be erased overnight. In the reflection of the rearview mirror, Cody caught glimpses of the trailer bouncing along, and he prayed the horse's fragile legs wouldn't be too jarred by the ride. Now and then, the truck sputtered on hills, its engine threatening to overheat. Yet Cody pressed on, determined to keep the appointment. He arrived at a quiet veterinary clinic surrounded by corrals and small paddocks. A white sign reading, "Dr. Paula Ferguson, Equine Rehabilitation," swung gently in the breeze. The property exuded a sense of calm competence, and Cody felt his pulse steady. Parking near the main barn, he hopped out to check on Dusty, who stood quietly, but was lathered in sweat. Immediately, a technician jogged over, greeting Cody with a polite nod while guiding him to the unloading area. Once the ramp was lowered, Dusty took cautious steps forward, nostrils flaring. Cody noticed the limp was more pronounced, likely from the bumpy journey. Inside the barn, the scent of disinfectant and fresh hay mingled under bright overhead lights. A tall woman with graying hair pulled back in a ponytail approached. "You must be Cody," she said warmly. "I'm Dr. Ferguson. Let's see how your horse is doing." Dusty's ears flicked at her voice, and she stroked his neck with practiced gentleness. She asked Cody about Dusty's medical history, any known injuries, and the extent of daily care. Cody explained everything he knew: how the horse had come into his life mere weeks ago, his uncertain background, the possible ligament damage, and the obvious malnourishment. Dr. Ferguson nodded, lips set in a thoughtful line. A few moments later, she led Dusty into a spacious examination area. The walls were lined with instruments, charts, and an X-ray machine. The veterinarian and her assistant carefully inspected Dusty's legs, noting scar tissue and the limited range of motion. "He definitely has signs of an older tendon injury," Dr. Ferguson said, running her hands gently along the fetlock. "There might be arthritic changes as well, but first I'd like to get imaging done. We'll do some scans to see what's going on." Cody nodded, swallowing hard. He didn't dare ask about the cost just yet, though it loomed in his mind. Right now, Dusty's future was at stake. While Dr. Ferguson and her assistant prepared Dusty for X-rays, Cody waited in a small office. He glanced at framed photos of recovered horses on the walls. Glossy-coated animals galloping through fields, standing with ribbons from local shows, or calmly being ridden by smiling owners. A flicker of hope took root in his chest. If these horses, many of them battered or neglected, could heal, perhaps Dusty had a chance too. He promised himself he'd work off any debt he had to, whether by labor or extended payment plans. He wasn't going to walk away now. When Dr. Ferguson returned, she wore a measured expression. "We got some good images," she said. Dusty has scarring in the superficial digital flexor tendon, likely from being overworked on the circuit. There's also mild navicular changes, which explains the soreness in the hooves. None of it is necessarily a death sentence, but you need to be realistic. Full recovery for advanced cases can be lengthy. Best case scenario, with proper therapy, he could regain moderate mobility. He'll never be a competition horse again. Cody released the breath he'd been holding. "I just want him comfortable," he replied softly. "If he can walk around a pasture and enjoy a quiet life, that's enough for me." Dr. Ferguson offered a kind smile and launched into detailed instructions: controlled exercise, joint supplements, potential corrective shoeing, and possibly laser therapy to reduce inflammation. She also mentioned that Dusty would benefit from staying at her facility for a short period to begin a structured rehabilitation program. Cody's chest tightened at the prospect. He glanced down, working out the nerve to ask about cost. Dr. Ferguson, sensing his unease, placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Let's talk finances," she said. "I have flexible plans for owners like you. I can see the horse means a lot to you. Let's figure something out." Deep relief flooded Cody. As they spoke, he realized the expense was still daunting, but Dr. Ferguson's willingness to help made it feel less impossible. They settled on a combination plan. Dusty would remain at the clinic for 2 weeks of intensive therapy, then return home with a strict regimen of exercises Cody could handle himself. For payment, Dr. Ferguson suggested an installment arrangement, which Cody accepted gratefully. It was still a risk. Should anything else go wrong, money would be tight, but he refused to let fear dictate his decision. Dusty deserved this chance. Walking Dusty to a temporary stall, Cody lingered, stroking the horse's nose. Dusty nickered softly, shifting his weight, as though unsure of this new environment. "I'll be back soon," Cody said gently. "These folks will take good care of you. Just hang in there a little longer." A wave of emotions hit him. Guilt at leaving Dusty behind, relief at the hope for treatment, and gratitude toward the veterinarian who believed in second chances. As he closed the stall door, Dusty's dark eyes followed him, calm, yet questioning. On the way home, Cody wrestled with mixed feelings. The quiet hum of his truck's engine left too much space for worries about money, the ranch, and whether Dusty could truly improve. Yet he found solace in Dr. Ferguson's expertise. She'd dealt with far worse conditions, restoring life to horses many had abandoned. He reminded himself that every success story began with a leap of faith. If Dusty responded well, in time he might be able to graze freely, unencumbered by constant pain. That image alone was worth the struggle. Back at the ranch, an unusual hush greeted him. Without Dusty, the barn felt empty, despite his other animals milling about. Stepping inside, Cody ran his hand along the empty stall door. He pictured the horse's kind face, those tired eyes that still showed a glimmer of fight. Tomorrow he'd rise early, tend to chores, then head to the clinic to check on Dusty. This new schedule would challenge him, but he was ready to rearrange his life around the horse's healing process. Sometimes the weight of responsibility pressed on his shoulders, yet he found his spirit lifting at the thought that Dusty might finally escape a fate of pain and neglect. Over the next 2 weeks, Cody visited the clinic daily. He drove there before dawn, helped Dr. Ferguson's staff hand-walk Dusty in short, measured intervals, and observed as they applied cold therapy, ultrasound treatments, and gentle stretching exercises. Dusty's progress was slow but steady. The swelling in his leg began to subside, and he started placing more weight on it. Although the limp remained, each day seemed to bring a tiny improvement. The staff admired Cody's diligence, remarking that not every owner took such a keen interest in a horse considered past its prime. Cody simply smiled, grateful for every hour Dusty tolerated the treatments without protest. In quieter moments, he would stand by Dusty's stall, offering encouragement as the gelding nibbled at hay. Dr. Ferguson sometimes joined him, discussing the next steps in therapy and praising Dusty's resilience. Once she pointed out that the horse had started pushing eagerly against the stall door when he heard Cody's voice, clear evidence that a bond was forming. Cody felt an unexpected warmth at that comment. He recognized that their mutual trust was vital to Dusty's recovery. This old horse, once abandoned, had opened its heart to him. More than once, Cody fought back tears, realizing how close Dusty had come to being cast aside forever. One afternoon near the end of Dusty's stay, Dr. Ferguson pulled Cody aside. "He's done well these 2 weeks," she said, "but you'll need to maintain a careful routine at home. Keep the walks gentle, stick to the shoeing schedule, and don't rush. If you do that, I think he'll continue improving." Cody nodded, mentally rehearsing the list of instructions. He knew the hardest work lay ahead. Here at the clinic, they had specialized equipment and professional oversight. At home, it would all fall on him. Still, he felt more prepared than ever, determined to carry out every detail. When the time came to bring Dusty home, Cody arrived with the same borrowed trailer, now freshly repaired and lined with extra bedding. The horse loaded more easily than before, settling in with minimal fuss. On the drive back, Cody noticed Dusty stood with a steadier stance, as if those 2 weeks of therapy had renewed some lost confidence. Even the posture of the old horse seemed more balanced. Passing fields of grazing cattle and rows of sunflowers, Cody felt a wave of optimism. He replayed Dr. Ferguson's words in his mind. Dusty would never be a racer again, but he could live comfortably and maybe serve as a gentle riding horse if all went well. Back at the ranch, Cody guided Dusty down the trailer ramp. The horse raised his head, ears swiveling at familiar sights and sounds. As they walked toward the barn, Dusty paused, then let out a soft nicker. Cody couldn't help grinning. He led Dusty into the stall, layered thick with clean straw. The old horse sniffed the air, recognizing home. Cody stroked the faded star on Dusty's forehead. "Welcome back," he said gently. "We've got a long road, buddy, but we'll walk it together." The morning after Dusty's return felt almost celebratory, as though the ranch itself sensed a spark of renewal. Cody woke to the faint glow of sunrise, pulled on his boots, and hurried to the barn, his breath visible in the cool dawn air. When he unlatched the stall door, Dusty raised his head, ears flicking forward. The horse's gaze seemed more alert than before. Cody smiled, greeting him with a soft murmur. After all they had been through, the uncertain rescue, the painstaking therapy, there was something undeniably hopeful about this moment. Eager to follow Dr. Ferguson's instructions, Cody began with short, supervised walks. He led Dusty into the small corral behind the barn, where the ground had been softened by recent rains. At first, the old horse hesitated, testing each step for stability. Cody watched with a mixture of encouragement and caution, ready to intervene if Dusty stumbled. The air was fresh and carried the scent of damp earth, a pleasant change from the dryness of midsummer. Though Dusty's limp was still evident, his stride displayed a tentative strength that hadn't been there a few weeks earlier. Over the next few days, Cody stuck to the schedule, morning walks of 5 to 10 minutes, followed by gentle stretches and hoof inspections. Afternoons, he massaged Dusty's legs with liniment, just as Dr. Ferguson's staff had demonstrated. The horse would blink slowly, as if the warmth and pressure soothed away the lingering aches. In the evenings, Cody applied cold packs for a few minutes at a time to keep inflammation down. It was a lot of work, but as Dusty became more cooperative and trusting, each small improvement fueled Cody's determination. Still, finances weighed on Cody's mind. The vet bills would come due soon, and he had to find ways to keep up with monthly ranch expenses. He took on extra tasks at a nearby feedlot, rising before dawn to help load trucks or sort cattle, then returning late to tend to Dusty's therapy. His body ached from the long hours, But whenever he saw the horse contentedly munching hay or caught sight of Dusty's ears pricking up at his voice, Cody felt a calm reassurance that he had chosen the right path. A couple of weeks passed in this steady routine. One late afternoon, as Cody was carefully picking out Dusty's hooves, he heard the familiar rumble of a truck outside. Moments later, his longtime friend Rosie poked her head into the barn. She was a seasoned barrel racer with a wide smile and a braid of dark hair cascading down her back. In her arms, she carried a small bundle of supplies. "Surprise," she said, beaming. "I thought Dusty might like some special treats and, well, I figured you could use a visit." Cody couldn't help but grin. He hadn't seen Rosie in a few months, and her arrival felt like a dash of sunshine in the midst of his constant toil. Rosie approached Dusty's stall with careful steps, offering her hand for the horse to sniff. Dusty lifted his muzzle, nostrils quivering, then let out a low, curious nicker. "He looks better than I expected," Rosie said, admiration threading her voice. "You've done a good job." Cody shrugged modestly, admitting it was a team effort between Dr. Ferguson's therapy plan and the horse's own resilience. Rosie handed him a small tin of herbal balms and a pack of bran mashes flavored with apple. "Might ease his joints," she explained. "We used these on an older mare at my stable, and it seemed to help." Cody thanked her, touched by the gesture. As evening settled, they lingered in the barn, talking about old times in the future. Rosie shared stories of her recent barrel racing competitions and the new horse she was training. Then, with quiet awe, she asked for more details about Dusty's journey, how he'd almost gone to slaughter, how Dr. Ferguson had given him a second lease on life, and how Cody balanced it all with the ranch's demands. By the time she climbed back into her truck, the moon was high. "I'll visit again soon," Rosie said softly, starting the engine. "And if you ever need anything, you know where to find me." After she left, Cody stood outside the barn, gazing at the moonlit paddock. Dusty was already dozing in his stall, oblivious to human worries. With Rosie's help and the unwavering support of Dr. Ferguson, Cody felt less alone in his struggles. Despite the long days and looming bills, he could sense a quiet tide of change. Maybe Dusty's story would resonate with others too. Maybe if they saw that an old, broken-down horse could still find purpose, they'd learn to look at all animals and people with a bit more empathy. The next morning came with a brisk wind. Cody noticed Dusty's energy during their walk, a subtle shift in how the horse carried himself. Instead of staring at the ground, Dusty lifted his head, nostrils flaring as if curious about the wide pastures. Encouraged, Cody let him graze along the fence line while checking for any swelling. A wave of contentment washed over him. Though the limp was still present, the old horse seemed to be carrying more weight on the previously injured leg, the distribution smoother. At one point, a butterfly fluttered by and Dusty's ears rotated to follow it, a simple gesture that made Cody laugh at how easily those gentle moments lifted his spirits. He decided it was time for a slightly longer walk. They circled the ranch's perimeter, passing by the weathered sign that read, "Blue Creek Ranch." When Cody first inherited the place from an uncle, many people said it was too small and too run down to be profitable. Yet here he was, years later, making it work. As they ambled on, they encountered a few curious onlookers, a pair of goats bleating from a paddock and a calico cat perched on the fence. Dusty nickered softly, and Cody responded with a reassuring pat. Even in silence, they spoke to each other in subtle cues, slowing if Dusty wavered, moving on when he steadied. Toward the end of the walk, Dusty's pace faltered, his shoulder trembling under Cody's hand. Immediately, Cody eased the horse to a stop, letting him rest. "Easy, boy," he murmured. "We can head back now." The horse's nostrils flared with a soft huff, but he managed a few steady steps. Cody gave him all the time he needed, grateful for even a partial success. In his mind, Dr. Ferguson's words echoed. Slow, steady progress was the key. Pushing too hard might undo everything. By the time they returned to the barn, Dusty was breathing heavily, but not in obvious distress. That alone felt like a triumph. The rest of the week followed this pattern. Small steps, careful observation. Cody mapped out a schedule that included rest days to allow Dusty's muscles and tendons to recover. Whenever doubt nagged at him, he recalled the moment Dusty turned toward him that first day at the rodeo grounds. Something in that old horse's gaze said, "I'm not finished yet." That memory alone could silence Cody's worries for a while. Still, money troubles persisted. Cody sold a few more items he didn't need: old saddles, unused tack, and even an old trailer that had rusted beyond practical repair. He stacked each dollar carefully, knowing that any unexpected vet bills could wipe him out. Then came a phone call that changed the rhythm of his days. A local stable owner named Mrs. Morales had heard about Cody's gentle approach with Dusty. She'd also heard how he once trained skittish horses with patience rather than force. Now she offered him a part-time job helping her with a handful of difficult geldings and mares. He'd earn enough each week to keep the ranch afloat and continue Dusty's therapy. Cody readily agreed, his relief tangible. If there was one job he knew well, it was earning a horse's trust. He started at Mrs. Morales' stable the following Monday. From sunrise to midday, he worked with her horses, leading them through obstacle courses, teaching them to accept saddles calmly, and addressing problematic behaviors like biting or bolting. Mrs. Morales admired Cody's mild temperament and the way he always spoke to the horses as though they understood every word. In the afternoons, Cody hurried home to care for Dusty, continuing the scheduled walks and therapeutic stretches. Though the new job made for long days, it also gave him renewed purpose. Each dollar earned was a step toward security. One day, after a successful session with a particularly anxious mare, Mrs. Morales struck up a conversation about Cody's own animals. He told her about Dusty, how the horse had arrived on the brink of despair and how they'd fought for every inch of progress. Mrs. Morales listened intently, her eyes shining with empathy. "You have a gift," she said. "That horse is lucky to have found you. If you ever want to bring him here for some structured riding exercises once he's up for it, my ring is open. No charge." Cody felt gratitude flood his chest. The notion that Dusty might eventually be well enough to trot around a proper training ring, under the watchful eye of an experienced stable owner, felt like a dream. He thanked her, promising to consider it once Dusty grew strong enough. Encouragement seemed to come from all corners lately, and each moment of kindness helped him push aside lingering fears about the future. Early the next morning, Cody decided it was time to expand Dusty's walking route again. He led the horse toward a gently sloping meadow just beyond the main ranch fence. The grass was soft, and wildflowers dotted the landscape with bursts of color. Dusty snorted at the unfamiliar surroundings but followed Cody's lead without protest. For a while, they walked in silence, listening to the rustle of a breeze in the weeds and the distant lowing of cattle. Then, with no warning, Dusty gave a tentative little hop, almost a half-trot. Cody startled, worried the horse might be in pain. But Dusty stayed upright, ears forward, stepping with only a slight hitch in his gait. A lump caught in Cody's throat as he realized it wasn't a stumble. Dusty was trying to move with more freedom. The horse's eyes flicked to Cody as if to check whether it was allowed. Cody let out a half-laugh, half-sob. "Easy there, big guy," he said softly, letting Dusty settle back into a walk. Maybe a proper trot was still out of reach, but even that instinctive motion spoke volumes. The old horse was gaining confidence, perhaps even glimpsing a future beyond simple survival. Cody walked him back slowly, determined to keep things gentle, yet his heart pounded with excitement. Today was proof that, with enough faith and care, new chapters could begin for those who refused to give up. The following days passed in a flurry of cautious optimism, each one an opportunity for Dusty to build on his tentative progress. Every morning, Cody would wake with the sun, ready to guide the old horse through carefully timed walks, always mindful not to overtax that healing leg. If Dusty showed the slightest twinge of discomfort, Cody slowed the pace. If Dusty seemed restless and willing, they ventured a little farther. It was a delicate balance, one that required more patience than any training Cody had done before. But the gratification of seeing Dusty's spark grow made every moment worthwhile. One evening, just as the sky was veiling itself in deep blues and purples, Rosie drove up in her truck for another surprise visit. She parked by the corral and hopped out, leading her chestnut mare, Cinnamon, by the reins. Cody raised an eyebrow in welcome. He was standing by the fence, admiring how Dusty had started dozing calmly in the warm dusk. Rosie laughed softly at his perplexed expression, then explained that she thought Dusty might enjoy some gentle companionship, a non-threatening horse who could graze alongside him. Cody glanced toward Dusty's stall, considering the idea. For weeks, Dusty had been mostly alone, aside from the goats and a few other animals on the ranch. Perhaps another horse's presence would help him relax, maybe even encourage him to move a bit more. They led Cinnamon into the corral adjacent to Dusty's enclosure. The old gelding lifted his head, ears swiveling. Cinnamon sniffed the air, and a moment later let out a soft snort of greeting. Dusty responded with a quiet nicker. Though a fence separated them, both horses seemed to settle into a companionable peace. Rosie leaned on the railing, beaming. "See," she whispered. "He's happier with a friend nearby. Horses were never meant to live in isolation." Cody felt a surge of gratitude. "Thanks for thinking of this," he said. "Sometimes I get so caught up in Dusty's physical therapy, I forget he also needs social bonds." Rosie nodded, understanding that any animal, especially one with a traumatic past, could benefit from a calm, friendly presence. They spent the next hour chatting in hushed tones, watching as Dusty occasionally stretched his nose over the fence toward Cinnamon. The mare flicked her tail, content to share the evening's quiet. It was a small glimpse of normalcy, the kind most horses take for granted, and Cody felt a renewed sense of hope. Over the following week, the gentle companionship continued. Cinnamon came by on alternating evenings, and each time, Dusty seemed a little more at ease around her. He even tried to match her movements through the fence, stepping forward when she did, lowering his head to graze near the same patch of grass. Meanwhile, Cody maintained Dusty's schedule of short walks and therapeutic exercises, pleased to find the horse limping less on soft ground. One crisp morning, Cody dared to increase their walk time by a few minutes, guiding Dusty around a gentle loop at the ranch's far edge. Despite the leg's occasional stiffness, Dusty held his head high, eyes bright with curiosity. The next day brought a letter from Dr. Ferguson. Inside, she enclosed a progress chart and a warm note congratulating them on how far Dusty had come. She recommended adding a few light trot steps on a lead line once or twice a week if Dusty showed no signs of strain. Cody's heart quickened at the thought of seeing Dusty trot without pain, even if only for a few strides. That evening, he gently introduced the idea. After their usual slow walk, he positioned Dusty on level ground and clucked softly, urging him forward. The old gelding flicked an ear, as though questioning the command. Cody took a step, leading him on a loose line. Dusty hesitated, shifting his weight. Then he gathered what strength he had and trotted a few strides, an uneven rhythm but still a trot. Cody felt the lead rope grow taut, then relax as Dusty slowed, cautious but not distressed. Though not the smooth gait of younger days, it was progress. A broad grin crossed Cody's face. He ran a hand over Dusty's neck, praising him in quiet tones. The horse exhaled a breathy snort, ears pricked, seeming to ask if he'd done all right. Cody rewarded him with a gentle pat and a chunk of carrot, feeling a swell of pride at how far they'd come since that day at the rodeo. Yet not all days were smooth. There were mornings when Dusty's legs seemed more swollen, and the therapy walks had to be shortened. Sometimes the old injuries flared, leaving the horse reluctant to move. On those occasions, Cody had to remind himself that healing rarely followed a perfect path. He'd apply cooling packs, keep Dusty's stall comfortable, and contact Dr. Ferguson if he worried that a setback might derail their progress. Each stumble tested Cody's resolve, but quitting was never an option. In the silence of the barn, with only the soft sound of Dusty breathing and the gentle shuffling of hooves on straw, Cody found reassurance that every struggle was part of the journey. One afternoon, while mucking out a stall, Cody heard a vehicle approach. Looking out, he saw a sleek black pickup he didn't recognize. The door opened, and a man in a pristine cowboy hat stepped onto the gravel. His boots gleamed unnaturally, and a wide belt buckle caught the sunlight. Cody wiped his brow, wariness prickling along his spine. Strangers who arrived without notice seldom bore good news. "Howdy," the man called out, tipping his hat in a show of politeness. "Name's Bradley Sharp. I've heard through the grapevine you're the fella who saved an old horse from the rodeo." His words carried an oily smoothness that made Cody uneasy. He set aside the pitchfork and walked over, offering a curt nod. "Yeah, I took in an older gelding. Why do you ask?" Bradley surveyed the modest property, from the humble barn to the small corral, then turned back with a tight smile. "I run a local horse auction house, among other ventures," Bradley said. "Folks mention you've been putting a lot of time and money into that nag. I thought I might see if you're open to a deal." Cody felt his stomach twist. He knew too well that some auctions served as halfway points to slaughter. Bradley must have gleaned that Dusty was once destined for the kill pen. Cody squared his shoulders. "He's not for sale," he stated quietly. Bradley chuckled in disbelief, as though he found the notion quaint. "Listen, friend, it's clear you've done wonders rehabilitating him. But let's be real. You're not exactly swimming in cash out here, and older horses drain resources." He reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a crisp check. "I'll pay you a fair sum and take him off your hands, then you won't have to keep footing the bills for a horse that'll never earn you a cent." His tone was casual, as though he were offering a neighborly favor. Cody's jaw tightened. He glanced at the check, noticing the figure, a temptingly high amount for a horse that people had once deemed worthless. It was enough to cover the vet bills and then some. But the thought of Dusty ending up in questionable auctions, potentially passed from hand to hand, made his blood run cold. He shook his head firmly. "No, he's not property for me to flip. He's a living being who deserves respect. I'm not selling him." Bradley's smile hardened, and a slick edge crept into his voice. "Don't be stubborn. You'd make more than that horse will ever earn you, and you'd be free of the burden." When Cody remained silent, Bradley pushed on. "A man can't live on principle alone. Sooner or later, you'll need real money. What happens then?" Cody felt anger rise, but he forced his voice to remain steady. "I'll manage," he said. "Dusty's not going anywhere. Kindly leave." For a moment, they locked eyes in standoff. Bradley's gaze flicked dismissively over the barn. Finally, he shrugged as though bored. "Suit yourself," he drawled. "But don't come crying for help when that old horse bleeds you dry." He turned on his heel, climbed back into his truck, and sped off in a swirl of dust and gravel. Cody stood there a moment, fists clenched, heart pounding. The encounter left him rattled. He knew that money was tight, painfully so, and Bradley's check would have solved many of his problems. But the idea of betraying Dusty's trust sickened him. Taking a deep breath, he forced himself to think beyond immediate financial strain. Dusty was family now. Turning a profit on him would break something inside Cody that no amount of money could repair. He heard a nicker from the barn and realized the old horse had sensed his return. Walking back inside, Cody paused at Dusty's stall. The gelding stood quietly, ears angled forward, as if asking what had upset him. Cody smoothed a hand down Dusty's neck, drawing comfort from the horse's patient acceptance. "Don't worry," he murmured. "You're staying right here. We'll figure everything out." In response, Dusty bobbed his head, content to have his caretaker near. The tension from Bradley's visit lingered in Cody's mind, but Dusty's presence reminded him of why he had chosen this path. Some things, like loyalty, compassion, and second chances, were beyond price. That evening, Cody set out extra hay for Dusty and checked the horse's legs for swelling. He recalled Dr. Ferguson's advice about introducing short segments of trotting, but decided to wait another day. His nerves were still raw from the confrontation. Instead, he simply brushed Dusty's coat, careful to untangle the mane and tail. The horse stood calmly under his touch, as if the rhythmic strokes of the brush brought them both peace. Outside, the last of the twilight melted into a dark sky dotted with stars. Cody felt his breath even out, the day's turmoil fading into the steady hush of the ranch. Early the next morning, Cody woke with a faint sense of dread still lingering from the previous day's confrontation with Bradley. Despite the fear that gnawed at him, he forced himself out of bed, pulled on his boots, and headed for the barn. The moment he saw Dusty's familiar silhouette in the stall, some of his anxiety eased. The old gelding perked up at his approach, ears tilting forward. Cody offered a gentle greeting, stroking Dusty's neck and murmuring reassurances. He knew he couldn't let Bradley's threat overshadow all the progress they'd made. A single encounter wouldn't derail the future he envisioned for Dusty. Though the man's harsh words lingered in Cody's mind, he reminded himself that no amount of money justified abandoning the horse that had come to trust him. After double-checking Dusty's feed, Cody retrieved a soft brush and ran it over the horse's coat, mindful of any tender spots. The old gelding closed his eyes at the gentle strokes, seeming to relish the routine. Outside, the sky was streaked with pink and gold, hinting at a warmer day ahead. Cody took a moment to breathe in the crisp morning air, letting it fill him with renewed resolve. The ranch might be small, the finances tight, and his future uncertain, but every day Dusty grew stronger was a testament to their hard work. In time, perhaps Bradley's offer would fade into a bad memory. For now, Cody focused on the next step, finishing chores, fitting in a short training session, and preparing for his shift at Mrs. Morales' stable. Cody's midday routine at Mrs. Morales' place had become a steady source of income, as well as a fulfilling challenge. Her stable housed a variety of horses, from spirited young colts to older broodmares that needed gentler handling. Every time Cody worked with a nervous horse, he recalled Dusty's trust-building process. Patience, soft words, and clear boundaries were key. Mrs. Morales admired his progress and occasionally snuck him an extra tip, knowing he was pouring his earnings into Dusty's care. By the time Cody returned to his own ranch each afternoon, he was physically spent, but felt a sense of accomplishment. It gave him hope that no matter how dire things seemed, there was a path forward, one forged by compassion, hard work, and the quiet perseverance Dusty displayed each day. As the weeks rolled on, Dusty's limp lessened bit by bit. On mild afternoons, Cody started introducing 10-minute sessions of light lunging, guiding Dusty in slow circles within a small pen. At first, the horse would take hesitant steps, ears swiveling to Cody for reassurance. Gradually, he learned to move in a steady rhythm, the old injuries becoming less of a hindrance. Cody noticed how Dusty's muscles, once so wasted, were beginning to regain a faint tone. Though the progress remained fragile, Every rotation around the pen served as a reminder that patience was paying off. In the evenings, Cody would sometimes lead Dusty out to the meadow, letting him graze beside the goats or simply stand under the fading light. These peaceful interludes felt like a gift for them both. One afternoon, Rosie arrived with Cinnamon in tow. She proposed letting Dusty walk alongside her mare in a more open space, thinking the camaraderie might encourage the old gelding to explore. Cody agreed, hopeful that Dusty would feel secure with a calm companion. They led both horses to a pasture behind Rosie's trailer, well away from bustling roads or sudden noises. At first, Dusty hung back, seemingly unsure of Cinnamon's movements, but the mare kept a serene demeanor, pausing to let Dusty catch up. Slowly, the pair wandered around the pasture, muzzles dipping into patches of fresh clover. Cody and Rosie followed at a respectful distance, marveling at how Dusty's stiff gait seemed to relax with Cinnamon nearby. The hour passed gently, punctuated by quiet laughter and the rustle of wind in the grass. Though most days were marked by promise, Cody couldn't escape the pressing reality of finances. Vet bills, feed costs, and everyday expenses piled up, and his part-time work at Mrs. Morales' stable, while helpful, only went so far. Late at night, as he tried to balance the books, a knot of worry tightened in his chest. He considered selling one of his younger horses or renting out a portion of the property, but that came with complications. Sometimes he remembered Bradley's smug expression in that insulting offer. A pang of doubt would strike, but he shoved it aside. Dusty was not a commodity to trade. On the hardest evenings, Cody would walk out to the barn, find Dusty waiting at the stall door, and feel a flicker of certainty that kept him resolute. One crisp morning, a neighbor named Clara arrived unexpectedly with a small trailer of hay bales. She mentioned she'd heard rumors of Cody's struggles and wanted to offer a helping hand. Cody, humbled by her kindness, tried to refuse at first, but Clara insisted, explaining that she'd seen how he treated his animals and respected his resolve. Though reluctant to accept charity, Cody realized this might ease his immediate crisis. Tears pricked his eyes when he thanked her, remembering how people had once doubted his ability to keep the ranch alive. Clara's visit felt like a reminder that he wasn't alone. That afternoon, as he stacked the fresh hay, he whispered his gratitude to the silent barn walls. Dusty nickered in response, as though echoing the sentiment. Encouraged by this small act of goodwill, Cody refocused on Dusty's therapy. He decided to attempt a light ride in the coming weeks, not to push the horse, but to see if carrying a rider at a walk might be feasible. It was a delicate step, and Dr. Ferguson had mentioned it could help rebuild muscle if done correctly. For days, Cody worked on desensitizing Dusty to the saddle once more, draping a blanket across his back, then adding lightweight tack. Dusty pinned his ears the first time, as though remembering old pains, but Cody's calm voice and gentle approach soon relaxed him. Over time, the horse accepted the saddle without flinching. Still, Cody chose not to mount up until he was certain Dusty showed no discomfort. Finally, on a bright afternoon when the air felt neither too hot nor too cold, Cody led Dusty into the round pen. Rosie stood by for support, holding the lead rope, while Cody eased himself into the saddle. The gelding shifted uneasily, a tremor passing through his legs. Cody murmured words of reassurance, stroking Dusty's neck as he balanced his weight carefully. For a tense moment, Dusty hesitated, ears swiveling back as though recalling the pain of past riders. Yet no pain came this time, only the gentle pressure of Cody's legs and the calm presence of a friend who'd never forced him to run. After a few long breaths, Dusty took a tentative step forward, then another. Rosie's eyes shone with amazement, and Cody let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. With careful guidance, they circled the pen at a slow walk. Dusty's steps were far from perfect. There was still a hitch in his stride, a subtle reminder of old wounds, but he carried Cody's weight without collapsing. In that tranquil ring, Under the soft afternoon sun, the months of effort came into sharp focus. Rosie quietly offered words of praise, echoing Cody's gratitude toward a horse that refused to give up. When the short ride ended, Cody dismounted, tears burning in his eyes. He pressed his forehead to Dusty's and whispered, "Thank you." It was a moment that transcended any notion of ownership or obligation. Here stood two survivors, supporting each other, forging a bond that money could never buy. They felt free. Over the next few days, the exhilaration of that successful first ride lingered in Cody's mind. Each time he passed by Dusty's stall, he remembered the horse's cautious steps, how every stride represented a triumph over past injuries and lingering fears. Although they had kept the session brief, the knowledge that Dusty could once again bear a rider, even at a walk, signaled a momentous turning point. Still, Cody refused to rush things. The old gelding had come too far for him to risk any needless setbacks. He continued the same balanced routine, gentle lunges in the round pen, short walks around the property, and evenings of grooming that soothed both of them. Sometimes, when Dusty allowed it, Cody lightly draped a saddle over his back as a reminder of their progress. If the horse appeared calm, Cody would mount and walk a slow circle or two, always careful to listen for signs of discomfort. Dusty responded with a measured acceptance, ears often tipped back toward Cody's voice. Now and again, the gelding's gait caught on old aches, but he no longer pinned his ears or hesitated in fear. Their trust had become a language all its own. Encouraged by this steady improvement, Cody decided to ask Rosie for help in broadening Dusty's horizons. One Saturday morning, as sunlight filtered through the barn, she arrived with her mare, Cinnamon, trailing behind. Rosie wore her usual big-hearted grin, and she carried 2 sets of lightweight tack. "I was thinking," she began, "maybe today we could ride alongside one another. Dusty could follow Cinnamon's lead at a slow walk. It might help build his confidence." Cody studied Dusty's face, assessing whether the horse felt ready for such an outing. Dusty bobbed his head and exhaled softly, as if giving his own approval. Smiling, Cody agreed. Together, they prepped both horses, double-checked all buckles, and led them into the open corral. Dusty eyed Cinnamon without anxiety, recalling the hours they'd already spent grazing near one another. Rosie mounted her mare first. Then Cody swung carefully into the saddle on Dusty, whispering encouragement and feeling the horse's heartbeat under his legs. This time, Dusty hardly flinched, merely pawing at the dirt once before relaxing. At Rosie's signal, Cinnamon started forward at a gentle walk. Dusty followed, ears forward, head high. They traversed the corral in a wide loop, the horse's hooves stirring up little clouds of dust in the warm morning light. Rosie grinned over her shoulder. "Look at him go. He seems proud of himself." Cody laughed softly, patting Dusty's neck. "He has every right to be," he murmured. As they circled together, Cody noticed that Dusty's stride had improved. Though still a bit uneven, there was less of the old hitch. Each lap built the horse's confidence further, and when they finally came to a halt, Dusty let out a quiet snort of satisfaction. Rosie dismounted first, slipping off Cinnamon's saddle, while Cody eased himself down beside Dusty. The two riders exchanged excited smiles, aware that this was more than just a routine exercise. It felt like the unveiling of a whole new chapter for the horse that had once been dismissed as useless. After lunch, Rosie helped Cody prepare a modest obstacle course in the corral. They set up poles on the ground for the horses to step over and positioned a pair of barrels to practice turns at a walk. Cody wasn't certain Dusty was ready for such maneuvers, but Rosie reasoned that a mild challenge could sharpen his balance and coordination. They led Dusty through the course in hand first, guiding him over the poles at a slow pace. The old gelding flicked his ears suspiciously at the barrels, as though recalling the rodeo environment, but he followed Cody's lead. Each successful step boosted Cody's resolve. If Dusty could conquer these small obstacles, perhaps he could safely navigate all the twists life threw at him. As the day wore on, Rosie had to head home. She promised to return soon, leaving Cinnamon behind for the night so the mare and Dusty could relax in adjacent paddocks. Cody thanked her profusely, reminding himself how lucky he was to have supportive friends. After she drove off, he stayed outside, leaning on the fence with a thoughtful expression. The corral sat silent under a changing sky, the shadows of late afternoon beginning to stretch across the yard. Dusty grazed near Cinnamon, no sign of tension in his posture. For a brief moment, Cody allowed himself to imagine a future where Dusty carried him along gentle trails, or perhaps even performed in a small local show, demonstrating that an aged, once injured horse could still move with dignity and grace. Yet despite these hopes, practical worries continued to gnaw at Cody. He spent the next few mornings juggling chores, checking feed supplies, and working his hours at Mrs. Morales' stable. The cost of specialized supplements, the lingering vet bills, and the ranch's upkeep weighed heavily on his shoulders. Neighbors like Clara had extended helping hands, but Cody wanted to stand on his own as much as possible. Late one night, after balancing his ledger, he realized he had just enough to cover the coming month's expenses if nothing unexpected occurred. The thought comforted him somewhat, though the memory of Bradley's smug voice still haunted his quieter moments. He refused to believe desperation would force him into any deal that compromised Dusty's safety. Soon, the respite of a new success brightened the ranch. Cody received a letter from a local horse group inviting him to bring Dusty to a modest schooling show in a few weeks, designed for riders rehabbing their mounts or starting young horses. The event wasn't about trophies or money, but rather the shared experience of training and trust building. At first, Cody hesitated. Dusty was still a long way from being fully sound, and a public gathering might overwhelm him. On the other hand, it could be a supportive venue for them to dip their toes into a social environment that didn't carry the pressure of competition. Dr. Ferguson had once mentioned that controlled, low-stress outings could benefit an older horse's mental health as much as physical therapy. Perhaps this was their chance. Cody cleared the idea with Rosie, who immediately volunteered to accompany them and bring Cinnamon as a calming influence. Then he called Dr. Ferguson, explaining the show's laid-back atmosphere. She approved, suggesting that if Dusty tolerated short rides at home, he might be capable of walking a simple pattern in front of a friendly crowd. Cody hung up, feeling a tingle of excitement. Even a gentle demonstration, nothing fancy, might serve as a testament to second chances. And maybe, just maybe, it could inspire someone else to think twice before discarding an older or injured horse. With fresh motivation, Cody spent the following days reinforcing Dusty's strength. Their rides remained short, interspersed with long rest periods, careful grooming, and occasional sessions over the ground poles to keep Dusty focused. Rosie came by whenever she could, praising Dusty's improvement and reminding Cody not to push too hard. Cinnamon's presence remained invaluable, especially during small trail rides around the perimeter of the ranch. Dusty followed the mare's lead like a faithful companion, each step forging a deeper sense of mutual reliance. As the schooling show approached, Cody made modest preparations, a well-fitting saddle pad, a clean halter, and simple braiding for Dusty's mane if he tolerated it. The idea of hauling Dusty again brought back memories of their initial trip to Dr. Ferguson's clinic, when the horse had stood trembling in the trailer. Now, though, Cody sensed Dusty was calmer, more trusting of whatever direction he offered. On the morning of the event, Rosie arrived early with Cinnamon, and they loaded the two horses into Cody's borrowed trailer. Dusty paused at the threshold, sniffing the air, but walked in without protest. Cody's heart swelled at that small sign of progress. They traveled slowly, wanting to spare Dusty any jarring bumps. Upon arriving at the fairgrounds, Cody noticed how different this setting was from the boisterous rodeo where he'd first encountered Dusty. Here, people milled about in friendly clusters, guiding young or timid horses around a makeshift arena. Soft applause drifted on the breeze when a rider coaxed a nervous filly through a set of cones. The atmosphere was encouraging, not cutthroat. Cody eased open the trailer door and let Dusty step onto the grass. The old gelding glanced around, ears flicking, but showed no sign of panic. Rosie's grin confirmed her pride. They signed up for a low-level walk-trot class meant for riders rebuilding confidence in their horses. Cody felt jittery, though he tried to project calm. Dusty, sensing his nerves, raised his head, as if scanning for threats. Cody soothed him with a few strokes of the neck, then mounted carefully. Around them, other participants walked their mounts in gentle circles, exchanging polite smiles and nods. A steward announced that the class would begin shortly, and Cody positioned Dusty near the rail, Rosie and Cinnamon close behind. When the signal came, Dusty stepped forward at a walk, ears perked. Cody could feel the old horse's muscles tense with anticipation, but there was no dread. As the announcer instructed riders to reverse direction, Dusty managed a neat pivot. Then, at the cue to trot for a short distance, he broke into a halting but determined jog. Cody let out a soft exhale, astonished by how steady Dusty felt under him. Though hardly graceful, it was enough to keep up with the gentle pace set by the other horses. A scattering of claps arose from onlookers who recognized the effort. When the class concluded, Cody dismounted, fighting the surge of emotion welling in his chest. Dusty had done it. They hadn't won ribbons or applause for skill, but that didn't matter. Here, in front of strangers who offered nothing but kind support, Dusty had shown that life remained inside those weary bones. Rosie walked over, giving Dusty a celebratory pat, her eyes brimming with tears. Cody could only nod in gratitude, unable to form words for the sense of accomplishment pulsing through him. Dusty snorted softly, lowering his head for a well-deserved rest. And in that quiet moment, Cody remembered exactly why he had taken such a risk at the rodeo grounds all those weeks ago. Tired but buoyed by triumph, Cody and Rosie led their horses back to the trailer. The schooling show's atmosphere remained friendly and low-key, and Dusty's cautious trot had earned approving nods from the handful of spectators. As they loosened their girths, Cody realized his hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the lingering adrenaline of an emotional victory. Dusty, sensing his excitement, stood quietly, ears relaxed as if to say, "We did it." Nearby, a few other riders complimented Cody on Dusty's calm manner. Some even asked about the horse's story, noticing his scarred legs and cautious movements. Cody answered softly, explaining how Dusty had nearly been discarded, but found a second chance at life. Each time he shared that tale, he felt a spark of pride. He hoped that maybe, just maybe, someone in the crowd would think twice before riding off their own aging or injured horse. Rosie returned with 2 bottles of water, passing one to Cody. "I can't believe how composed he was," she said, still breathless. "He looked like he'd done this a dozen times." Cody sipped his water, glancing fondly at Dusty. "He's braver than I am," he admitted with a grin. Together, they loaded the horses back into the trailer, leaving the fairgrounds under the warm afternoon sun. Even though the show wasn't competitive, Cody felt like a champion on the drive home, a smile refusing to leave his face. Over the next week, word spread among the local horse community about Dusty's small victory. A few folks dropped by the ranch, curious to see the old gelding for themselves. Some offered supplies or encouragement. Others simply wanted to meet the horse who'd refused to give up. Cody felt humbled by these visits. He accepted the help graciously, recalling the many times he'd struggled alone. Gradually, as the ranch gained this trickle of attention, Cody found a new sense of purpose. If Dusty could inspire such kindness, perhaps their story had the power to shift attitudes around neglected animals. Amid this wave of goodwill, though, challenges persisted. Early one morning, Cody noticed Dusty seemed stiff, reluctant to move from his stall. Alarmed, he ran his hands down the horse's legs, searching for heat or swelling. Sure enough, there was a warm spot near the old scar tissue, and Dusty flinched slightly. Cody's heart pounded. Perhaps the schooling show had overtaxed the horse, or maybe the terrain near the fairgrounds had caused a minor strain. Fear crept in, reminding him that this journey was far from over. He alerted Dr. Ferguson, who arrived later that day. After examining Dusty, she delivered a measured verdict. It appeared to be a mild flare-up, likely aggravated by increased activity. She recommended a week of rest, cold therapy, and anti-inflammatory meds. Cody followed her advice to the letter, avoiding any rides or lunging sessions. Each time he brought a cold compress to Dusty's leg, the horse would stand patiently, as though trusting that Cody's care would soothe the ache. Rosie visited to lift Cody's spirits, reminding him that minor setbacks were normal. Yet Cody couldn't help worrying that pushing Dusty's limits might ultimately do more harm than good. Despite this stumbling block, the local community's interest in Dusty's story continued to grow. One afternoon, an older gentleman named Mr. Chambers stopped by, leaning on a cane. He introduced himself as a retired trainer who had once worked with thoroughbreds. "I've heard about that old horse you saved," he said in a soft drawl. "Reminds me of one I rescued years ago. Glad to see someone's doing right by these animals." He handed Cody a set of lightly used protective boots for Dusty's legs. "They might help," he explained. "Offer a bit more support when he's back in work." Cody held the boots reverently. They were good quality, something he would never have afforded on his own. With genuine gratitude, he thanked Mr. Chambers and promised to use them well. It struck him how Dusty's presence had opened a pathway for kindness between strangers. The horse had become a sort of ambassador, teaching people the importance of empathy and second chances. It was a responsibility Cody took seriously, fueling his resolve to keep Dusty healthy and happy. Soon, Dusty's flare-up improved. The heat in his legs subsided, and Dr. Ferguson confirmed that light exercise was safe to resume. Cautiously, Cody began with short walks again. Dusty, happy to be out of the stall, gave an eager snort when he first stepped into the corral, though he still favored the injured leg slightly. Over the course of a week, they progressed to a gentle trot on the lunge line, supplemented by careful cool-downs and leg wraps afterward. The old gelding's willingness to continue trying never ceased to amaze Cody. In quieter moments, he wondered if Dusty sensed how dearly he was loved. Meanwhile, Cody kept up his job at Mrs. Morales' stable. She'd recently acquired a rescue horse of her own, a timid mare named Bella, frightened of sudden noises. Watching Cody's approach with Dusty, Mrs. Morales asked if he might help Bella gain confidence. Cody agreed, empathizing with the mare's uncertain spirit. Each session with Bella reminded him of Dusty's early days, when a gentle voice and a soft touch had meant the difference between life and death. Slowly, Bella relaxed under Cody's steady guidance, reinforcing his belief that every horse deserved patience and a chance at redemption. Late one evening, after finishing chores, Cody settled on a bale of hay in the barn. Moonlight slanted through the open door, illuminating Dusty's stall. The horse was dozing, his breathing calm and steady. In that hush, Cody felt a surge of gratitude for the simple fact that Dusty was alive, healing, and relatively content. He thought back to the day he'd found him at the rodeo, unwanted, dismissed, facing slaughter. So much had changed. Dusty had become a beacon, reminding Cody that even in life's darkest corners, compassion could spark a quiet miracle. Yet as the moon rose higher, Cody's anxieties returned, creeping in like shadows across the barn floor. How long could he sustain this? The ranch still needed repairs, and there were debts he hadn't fully paid off. Though Dr. Ferguson's payment plan was generous, it still required timely installments, and if Dusty suffered another serious setback, the vet bills might skyrocket again. Cody exhaled a weary sigh, running a hand over his face. There were moments he felt overwhelmed, like he was trying to hold the ranch, Dusty's future, and his own well-being together with nothing but fraying rope. But the alternative, abandoning Dusty, was unthinkable. That thought alone kept him forging ahead, day by day. Before turning in, he rose to check on Dusty one last time. The horse blinked awake, arching his neck for a gentle pat. Cody whispered, "Sleep well, big guy. We'll face tomorrow together." In response, Dusty nudged Cody's shoulder, almost as if to say, "I trust you." A thread of warmth wove through Cody's chest. No matter how daunting life became, that simple bond anchored him in hope. The next morning brought a mild rain that pattered on the barn's roof. The damp air carried the scent of wet earth and clover, refreshing after the heat of previous weeks. Cody fed Dusty his mash, adding joint supplements and carefully checking his legs for any sign of swelling. Satisfied, he headed over to Mrs. Morales's to put in his hours. They spent a productive day working with Bella, coaxing her through a simple obstacle course. When he returned home that afternoon, the rain had stopped, leaving behind puddles and a sky streaked with silver clouds. Cody found Rosie waiting at the ranch gate, her truck engine idling. She hopped out, an excited glimmer in her eyes. "You won't believe who I ran into today," she said. "There's a traveling horse show coming through 2 towns over in a couple of weeks. Nothing fancy, just local riders showcasing how far their horses have come. I'm thinking it could be another chance for Dusty if you're up for it." Cody hesitated, thoughts whirring. Another event so soon? Dusty's leg was improving, but they had to be careful. Rosie caught the apprehension in his expression. "Hey, no pressure," she assured him. "I just thought maybe you'd like to expose Dusty to different arenas. Keep building that confidence. You could even just do a quiet demonstration at a walk, like at the schooling show. People would love to see a horse who's defied expectations." Her voice brimmed with genuine enthusiasm. Cody mulled it over. Dr. Ferguson had said new experiences could be beneficial, provided the stress was minimal. And Dusty had seemed to thrive on the positive energy at the small show. Another outing might reinforce that progress. "All right," he said, a hint of uncertainty in his tone. "We'll take it slow, but I'll think about it. If Dr. Ferguson gives the go-ahead, maybe we'll try." Rosie's face lit up, and Cody felt a slight thrill beneath the worry. He didn't know what the future held, but with every milestone he and Dusty reached, it felt as though another door opened. Maybe life was weaving a story larger than either of them could see, a story about resilience, about a young man and an old horse bound together by hope, and about a small ranch that might prove its worth in the face of all odds. If so, Cody was determined to let Dusty's steady heart lead the way. Cody set aside the idea of the traveling horse show for a few days, wanting to consult Dr. Ferguson and see how Dusty's leg continued to heal. Each morning he would lead the old gelding out to the paddock, carefully monitoring every step. The tenderness that had alarmed him seemed less pronounced now, and Dusty's spirit remained bright. Whenever they passed the fence line, the horse would stretch his neck as if sniffing the future. Cody often found himself smiling at such moments, convinced that Dusty felt the same cautious anticipation he did. One sunny afternoon, Cody decided it was time for a checkup at Dr. Ferguson's clinic. He loaded Dusty into the trailer with the same measured patience as always, making sure the protective boots Mr. Chambers had donated were snug around the horse's legs. The drive to the clinic was uneventful, though Cody's mind buzzed with questions. Would the traveling show be safe for an older horse? Could they handle the rigors of another haul so soon after Dusty's setback? At the same time, Cody thought about how each successful trip away from home had gradually broadened Dusty's confidence. As they arrived at the clinic, Dr. Ferguson greeted them outside with her usual warmth. She gave Dusty a thorough exam, checking hoof balance, leg joints, and overall flexibility. Although the horse flinched once when she palpated an old scar, he remained relatively calm. "He's healing nicely," she told Cody, "but I want you to keep up the short rides and daily range of motion stretches. No gallops, no sharp turns." Her tone implied a kind of gentle caution. Cody nodded, relieved. She didn't forbid them from traveling, which gave him hope that the show might be within reach. Before Cody left, Dr. Ferguson helped him adjust the new protective boots, demonstrating a better fit around Dusty's fetlocks. She stressed the importance of not over-relying on supportive gear, reminding Cody that building natural strength through consistent exercise was just as crucial. Still, she smiled at Dusty as though the horse were a living testament to resilience. On the drive back, Cody felt buoyed by the vet's quiet confidence, envisioning Dusty stepping calmly into that traveling show arena. Perhaps they would just walk a single circle or demonstrate how far they had come in rebuilding trust. That, in itself, would be a victory. Rosie popped by the next day, anxious for an update. When Cody explained that Dr. Ferguson saw no glaring reason to skip the event, Rosie whooped with delight. "This is perfect," she exclaimed. "We'll bring Cinnamon too, just to keep Dusty relaxed. We'll take it slow, I promise." Cody chuckled at her enthusiasm, but inwardly he shared her excitement. He still worried about finances and the possibility of a relapse, yet the chance to show Dusty's progress felt too important to pass up. Maybe there would be others at that show in desperate need of hope, people whose horses had been written off. Dusty's story might inspire them to hold on. In the days leading up to the event, the ranch bustled with quiet preparation. Cody set aside time to walk Dusty in unfamiliar corners of the property, occasionally introducing small obstacles like a tarp or a low wooden rail to mimic the novelty of a show environment. At first, Dusty snorted at the rustling tarp, dancing sideways in alarm. Cody soothed him with soft words and gentle strokes along his neck. Gradually, Dusty realized it wasn't a threat, lowering his head to sniff the strange material. Each new experience felt like an incremental step forward, building a reservoir of trust that might sustain them in a busier setting. Meanwhile, Cody's job at Mrs. Morales' stable provided a semblance of financial stability. He poured every spare dollar into feed and supplements, carefully budgeting for the trip. Mrs. Morales noticed the strain in his eyes and surprised him one afternoon by offering a small bonus. "You've helped Bella come so far," she said. "I know you're working miracles with your own horse too. Think of this as a thank you." Cody accepted the extra money with gratitude that left him speechless. That evening, he brought home a fresh bag of premium feed for Dusty, feeling less burdened by the constant weight of bills. The kindness from the community continued to humble him. Finally, the morning of the traveling show arrived. Cody rose before dawn, loading Dusty's gear into his old pickup and double-checking each item. Rosie appeared soon after, hauling Cinnamon's trailer. Together, they carefully guided the horses aboard. Dusty hesitated for a moment, nostrils flaring at the unfamiliar smell of Rosie's trailer, but a gentle pat on his neck reassured him. After securing the partitions and verifying the route on a rumpled map, they set off. The sun began to climb as they wound down back roads, passing golden fields and quiet towns, forging a sense of promise in the crisp air. They reached the fairgrounds by mid-morning, where a modest bustle of riders and horses surrounded a makeshift arena. Cody spotted booths selling tack, homemade crafts, and snacks. It was more festive than he'd expected, with bright banners draped over fencing. The announcer's voice carried through a tinny loudspeaker, welcoming participants and praising the variety of equine backgrounds. Rosie guided Cinnamon out first, letting the mare adjust to the new sights. Cody followed, carefully backing Dusty down the ramp. The old gelding stood still, ears flicking in all directions. A few onlookers paused, curiosity in their eyes as they noted Dusty's scars and deliberate movement. In the next half hour, Cody and Rosie walked their horses around the perimeter, letting them sniff the rails and watch other participants practice. Dusty snorted at a fluttering banner, but calmed when Cody ran a reassuring hand along his mane. "He's doing great," Rosie whispered. "You can see how much he's improved." Cody nodded, remembering the days when Dusty could barely stand. Now the horse moved with careful but determined steps, no longer trembling at every sudden sound. The sight brought a lump to Cody's throat. Win or lose, though there were no trophies at stake, Dusty's mere presence here was a testament to what compassion and hard work could achieve. Eventually, the announcer called for the demonstration class, inviting riders to showcase special training journeys or rehabilitation stories. Cody's pulse thudded in his ears. With Rosie by his side, he led Dusty into the ring, giving the old gelding a moment to orient himself. Once the gate closed, Cody mounted slowly, mindful of Dusty's leg. He inhaled, letting the hush of the crowd soak in. Then, with a gentle squeeze, he urged Dusty forward at a walk. The horse's ears flicked back, then forward, as though double-checking his confidence. Step by step, they traced a simple circle. Although Dusty limped slightly, his head stayed high. Soft applause rippled through the stands. Cody felt tears sting his eyes. He guided Dusty into a short, straight line, then asked for a few strides of trot. The old horse hesitated, and Cody could feel the tension in each hoofbeat. Then Dusty exhaled and pushed forward, adopting a careful, uneven jog. Another, louder wave of applause broke out. Even at this unpolished gait, the onlookers sensed the significance. When they came to a halt, Cody dismounted, hugging Dusty's neck. In that moment, the arena's chatter faded to a soft hum, and it was only the two of them, man and horse, forging a bridge to redemption. Tears streaked Cody's cheeks as the announcer thanked him for sharing Dusty's story. Rosie approached with Cinnamon, her own face shining with pride. After that heartfelt demonstration, Cody and Dusty left the ring to a swirl of grateful applause, weaving through the small crowd gathered near the gate. Although the day's event wasn't about placing or ribbons, the pair had managed to capture everyone's hearts, reminding them that no horse was ever truly beyond redemption. Rosie, leading Cinnamon, beamed with pride as she caught up to them, congratulating Cody on the courage it took to share their story in a public setting. Dusty, for his part, seemed relaxed, as if he'd discovered that being seen didn't have to mean being judged. It could also mean being understood. Once outside the arena, a family approached, their daughter clutching a toy horse. She gazed at Dusty with wide eyes, evidently moved by his determination. Cody squatted beside her as she cautiously patted the gelding's shoulder. The girl's mother explained that they had a senior mare at home, and sometimes she worried it was too late to improve the old horse's condition. Cody, feeling Dusty nudge him gently, reassured them that any horse with heart and patience behind it could still find new life. The mother's relieved smile lingered, reinforcing Cody's belief in the power of shared hope. Over the next hour, several riders and curious onlookers trickled by to compliment Dusty or ask Cody about his rehabilitation methods. Some offered tips on joint supplements, while others simply extended heartfelt gratitude for proving that an aging animal could still flourish with proper care. By the time the demonstration class concluded, Dusty and Cody had become minor celebrities in that corner of the fairgrounds. For Cody, the real prize was seeing how his horse's story gave people a reason to believe in second chances, a reminder that perseverance and compassion could unite anyone with an open heart. Rosie soon reappeared, leading Cinnamon with pride. The mare displayed no signs of nerves, another testament to Rosie's patient training. After loading both horses and double-checking the gear, they embarked on the return journey. Dusty stood calmly during the drive, occasionally shifting his weight but betraying no hints of distress. Back at the ranch, Cody guided the old gelding down the ramp, pausing to pat his neck. Dusty let out a soft nicker that felt almost triumphant. They had conquered yet another challenge. Cody silently vowed never to forget how far they'd come from that fateful day at the rodeo. In the days that followed, Cody found a renewed sense of confidence in Dusty's potential. He maintained short, steady rides, ensuring the horse's leg remained healthy and gave him ample rest in between. Whenever Rosie visited, she marveled at how a once-defeated creature now exuded such quiet determination. The ranch itself felt revitalized, as though the walls absorbed Dusty's steadfast energy. Even the goats and barn cats seemed to sense a shift in atmosphere, greeting Cody each morning with extra enthusiasm. Gradually, the fear that had clung to Cody's thoughts began to recede, replaced by genuine faith in tomorrow. Still, life on a ranch demanded vigilance. Cody remained mindful of his budget, refusing to become complacent simply because Dusty had improved. He picked up extra hours at Mrs. Morales' stable, training skittish horses and helping with routine tasks. Whenever exhaustion crept in, he recalled the grateful applause from the traveling show, reminding himself of the purpose behind each sacrifice. Some nights, letters arrived from people who'd heard about Dusty's journey through neighbors or social media posts. Their words of appreciation and shared stories of rescued animals reassured Cody that their efforts resonated far beyond the ranch's humble borders. One crisp afternoon, Clara stopped by with another trailer of hay, smiling as she saw Dusty roam the corral with a steadier gait. She marveled at how much brighter the gelding's eyes were, recalling the trembling creature he once had been. Over mugs of steaming coffee, Clara and Cody spoke about the ranch's past, the uncertain early days when he'd almost lost everything, and the miracle that Dusty had become. Clara confided that her faith in second chances had doubled just by watching them. Cody, stirring his coffee, couldn't help but feel humbled by her sincerity and unwavering support. That evening, a gentle twilight wrapped the ranch in pale gold. Cody wandered out to the meadow, letting Dusty graze on soft grass. The old horse took leisurely steps, pausing to lift his head at distant bird calls. Cody sank onto a nearby stump, replaying all the hardships they'd endured: Dusty's malnourished body, the uncertain vet bills, Bradley's sneering offer. In the hush of that twilight, none of those trials seemed insurmountable. Dusty raised his muzzle, gazing toward Cody as if acknowledging their shared journey. A wave of gratitude swept over Cody, reminding him how powerful a single act of kindness could be. Later that week, Rosie brought news of another small exhibition happening nearby. This time, she was the one planning to compete in a barrel racing event. But she teased Cody about signing Dusty up for a simple walk-trot display. Cody chuckled, declining with no remorse. He felt no rush to collect accolades. Dusty had already proven enough to himself and others. Instead, Cody offered to come along as moral support, promising to cheer Rosie on from the sidelines. She accepted gratefully, taking it as further proof that genuine camaraderie trumped any superficial quest for trophies or bragging rights. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Cody decided it was time for a symbolic gesture. Fetching an old wooden plaque, he meticulously carved Dusty's name into its surface, along with a simple inscription, "Never too late." He mounted the plaque on a post near the barn door, so that everyone who visited would see the message. It stood as a reminder of what could be accomplished with love and perseverance. Every time Cody led Dusty past that plaque, he felt a surge of awe at how close the horse had come to a tragic end. Now Dusty's future felt boundless. At times, Cody reflected on the countless obstacles that had nearly driven him to despair. He recalled the sleepless nights worrying about feed bills and the sting of Bradley's ridicule. Yet each challenge had been offset by acts of kindness, from neighbors delivering hay to the letters of gratitude tucked in his mailbox. Dusty, too, had offered a steady source of resolve, pressing forward despite every ache and setback. The horse's unspoken trust felt like a compass pointing toward compassion rather than profit. In the end, Their bond was shaped not by convenience, but by the promise of healing together. Sometimes, standing alone under the barn's warm lantern glow, Cody would recall the very first evening Dusty arrived, stumbling, exhausted, and so near the end of his rope. He imagined how different life would be if he had said no that day. Perhaps Dusty would have disappeared into a slaughterhouse, never again to feel a gentle hand or taste fresh grass. Instead, here they were, two souls once scraping by on hope, now forging a path that exemplified perseverance. Cody understood that every triumph demanded risk, but he also recognized the deep fulfillment that came from answering a creature's silent plea. In time, Dusty became a fixture at Blue Creek Ranch, strolling its pastures with a serene grace that defied his age. Though his gait never lost that tiny hitch, it no longer defined him. Visitors came and went, marveling at how a discarded horse had become an emblem of possibility. As the seasons passed, Cody expanded his work with rescued animals, inspired by Dusty's example. Whenever doubt crept in, Cody only had to watch the old gelding lift his head and whinny. The message rang clear: love was stronger than fear. They had chosen one another, and in that choice, they'd found true belonging and a home.